We're good now. So we're live. That's on, we're recording, we're good.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to open the Thursday, March 13th, 2025 meeting of the Bellingham Planning Board. Nick, would you like to lead us in the pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item this evening is a public hearing on 190, 194, and 198 Hartford Avenue. We need to have a reading of the public notice. Nick,
Yeah, I was just,
in order to open the public meeting.
yeah, so just to be aware, the first three hearings, the two Hartford Ave projects and the 180 Payne Street project, we are going to open the hearings and then continue them. We're not having any discussion.
No discussion at all.
No discussion. So for 190, 194, and 190, well, if you want to open the public hearing, I will tell you when the dates are that the continuances are and the extension deadline or the decision deadline extension. So I have the public hearing notice. I don't know if you want me to read it or if anybody.
If you want to read all three, that'd be fine.
You okay with that, everybody? All right, so public hearing 190, 194, 198 Hartford Ave in accordance with the Town of Bellingham zoning bylaws, Article 26, Hartford Avenue Adaptive Use Overlay District. The planning board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, March 13th, 2025 at 7 p.m. in the Arcan Meeting Room in the Municipal Center. The applicant, Route 85 Realty Corp., 32 Hastings Street, P.O. Box 444, Mendon, Mass. 01756, is seeking a special permit for a two-story, 10,000 square foot retail building located at 190 Hartford Ave, 194 Hartford Ave, and 198 Hartford Ave, shown on Assessor's Map 24-7, 24-8, and 24-9, zoned residential. The three parcels consist of 1.21 acres and are located within the Hartford Avenue Adaptive Use Overlay District. The owner of the parcels is 217 River Road LLC, 8 Uxbridge Road, Mendon, Mass. 01756. The plans were prepared by Bowler Engineering, Mass. LLC, 352 Turnpike Road, Southborough, Mass. 01772. The applications and plans may be viewed at the Planning and Zoning Office or Town Clerk's Office in the Municipal Center, 10 Mechanic Street in Bellingham, Mass. during regular Municipal Center business hours. For questions, please contact the town planner at 508-657-2893.
I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing. Do I have a second? We have a motion on the floor and it's been seconded. Any discussion? I would call for the vote. All those in favor of opening the public hearing.
Nick, aye.
Brian, I.
Bill, aye.
Noah.
That motion passes unanimously.
Continuation date is April 10th, or the request is April 10th, 2025. The extension for the deadline decision date, June 30th, 2025.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second, Nick.
All in favor? All in favor?
Nick, aye.
Brian, I.
Bill, aye.
Noah.
So there's no discussion on that. The next item is 182 to 186.
Right. In accordance with the Town of Bellingham zoning bylaws, Article 26, Hartford Avenue Adaptive Use Overlay District, the planning board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, March 13th, 2025 at 7 p.m. in the Arcan Meeting Room in the Municipal Center. The applicant, Route 85 Realty Corp., 32 Hastings Street, P.O. Box 444, Mendon, Mass. 01756, is seeking a special permit for a 3,500 square foot bank with drive-through located at 182 Hartford Avenue and 186 Hartford Avenue, shown on Assessor's Map 24-5 and 24-6 zoned residential. The two parcels consist of 0.91 acres and are located within the Hartford Avenue Adaptive Use Overlay District. The owners of the parcels are Route 85 Realty Corp., 8 Uxbridge Road, Mendon, Mass. 01756. And 296 Main LLC, P O Box 444, Mendon, Mass. 01756. The plans were prepared by Bowler Engineering, Mass. LLC, 352 Turnpike Road, Southborough, Mass. 01772. The applications and plans may be viewed at the Planning and Zoning Office or Town Clerk's Office in the Municipal Center, 10 Mechanic Street in Bellingham, Mass. during regular Municipal Center business hours. For questions, please contact the town planner at 508-657-2893.
Move to open the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I'll call for the vote.
Nick, I.
Brian, I.
Bill, aye.
Bill, I. Steve, I.
That motion passes unanimously to open the bill.
Continuation date, the requested date, April 10th, 2025, extension, deadline decision date, June 30th, 2025.
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Nick, I.
Brian, I.
Bill, aye.
Bill, I. Steve, I.
That motion passes unanimously. The next item is 180 Page Street.
We're almost there. In accordance with the Town of Bellingham zoning bylaws, Article 28, 55 plus, active adult overlay district. The planning board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, March 13th, 2025 at 7 PM in the Arcan Meeting Room in the Municipal Center. The applicant, NECC Holdings LLC, Andrew Flynn, 66 Long Wharf, Suite 403, Boston, Mass. 02110, is seeking a special permit and stormwater management permit for 1,600 age-restricted 55 plus housing units and associated improvements located at 180 Payne Street, shown on Assessor's Map 95-37, 97-15C, 96-62A, 95-37-1, and 97-19, with portions zoned agricultural, residential, and suburban. The parcels consist of approximately 330 acres and are located within the 55 plus active adult overlay district. The owners of the parcels are January Holdings LLC, 180 Payne Street, Bellingham, Mass. 02019, and New England Country Club LLC, 60 Dedham Avenue, Suite 203, Needham, Mass. 02492. The plans were prepared by Bowler Engineering, Mass. LLC, 352 Turnpike Road, Southborough, Mass. 01772. The applications and plans may be viewed at the Planning and Zoning Office or Town Clerk's Office in the Municipal Center, 10 Mechanic Street in Bellingham, Mass. during regular Municipal Center business hours. For questions, please contact the town planner at 508-657-2893.
Move to open the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call for the vote.
Nick, I.
Brian, I.
Bill, aye.
Bill, I. Steve, I.
That motion passes unanimously.
So this one, to accommodate the large amount of public interest and the amount of people that will most likely attend the meeting, the applicant has requested to continue the meeting to Thursday, March 27th, 2025 at 7 PM at the Bellingham High School Auditorium, 60 Blackstone Street, Bellingham, Mass. 02019. No decision deadline extension because this is solely a special permit.
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We motion on the floor. It has been seconded. I will call for the vote.
Nick, I.
Brian, I.
Bill, aye.
Bill, I. Steve, I.
That motion passes unanimously. The next item is the continued public hearing on development plan 57 Mendon Street. Rob, can you bring us up to speed? I know
Sure.
we have information in our packets.
Yes, so applicants here, if you recall from the last meeting, there was a push to get a decision in order because with the approval comes the improvements that are needed at the site. So I have drafted a decision, should have been in your Dropbox. I made one edit to the decision, which was for the, well, here, let me go back for a minute. We were waiting on the final peer review letter or a final review. It was clean. There were two minor comments that one of them has been addressed in the conditions regarding soil testing, to just confirm that the soil conditions are as designed. That's the first one, and that's a pretty generic comment that we typically add in most of our decisions. The other item too is that I added the revised plan to the documents section of this. So there was, the applicant's engineer did revise the plans because there was one comment regarding an inconsistency with one of the elevations of the outlet structure and the design in the stormwater report. So Bill did submit plans. Those are now in the decision. I don't know if you would like me to go through the decision, if you guys have questions, comments, concerns.
Can you just give us some high points from the public?
Sure. I'm gonna pull this up on my screen.
The decision will be behind you in a moment.
Try to zoom in here. This is not helping. There we go. All right. All right, so this is all pretty much not boilerplate, but obviously listing the public hearing, date of the vote, all that stuff. All the documentation that we have in our file. So the determinations are here. So basically, one of the things that I wanted to do with this decision is try to really define what exactly is there now, what exactly is the, not really, well, I guess specify the use because the improvements are associated with the use. So, you know, for example, for determinations, we have the improvements that are listed are for the permeable paver storage and material areas, the installation of the bituminous berm, and the construction of the on-site stormwater management system, which is the scope of this. Explain that Cranes 101, they offer licensure, education, and safety training for hoisting equipment and also provides repairs associated with hoisting equipment on site. Accurate. The other items here, making sure that if there were any lighting proposed, which there isn't currently, but making sure that it's all dark sky compliant and shielded, so you don't have light spillover on the neighbors. A lot of this stuff is kind of boilerplate, but let me get to the more important items. So under the decision, our typical condition stating that the approval is limited to the improvements as noted on the approved plan. So that's the first condition. The second condition is highlighting exactly what is allowed in our zoning. So there's been a lot of discussion on what exactly is going on in the back storage area, because there's stuff associated with the repair business and stuff associated with the educational business. So our zoning allows for, in the B1 district, for a commercial use, 3 light commercial vehicles outside not exceeding 14,000 pounds, which is essentially like a 350, I guess, I would say. And then you're allowed 1 heavy commercial vehicle in excess of those limits. So that's 1 commercial vehicle in excess of 14,000 pounds. It's either or. So that's outdoor storage that would be allowed with the repair business. The Cranes 101 business, to specify exactly what's utilized, I did ask Jay what exactly you use for equipment, and from what our discussion was, he has 4 pieces of equipment that he uses regularly for the Cranes 101 training. And you have 2 vehicles that get used occasionally, I believe. So in the decision, I specified in here that there's the 6 unregistered hoisting vehicles for the training portion of this. Just to specify exactly what is allowed for being outside. And specify as well that this approval is not providing relief from any of those uses, because that is what has been allowed for our zoning. And the 6 unregistered vehicles for the training portion, training is a little bit tricky because of the Dover amendment, because it's technically an educational facility. So just specifying in this decision, making sure that it doesn't kind of increase more and more, and getting something more definitive on paper of what exactly you're seeing for equipment is the purpose of that. Some other items added on here. So we mentioned it previously that no fueling of machinery or vehicles shall take place on the permeable pavers. That's that working and testing area. 5, outdoor storage of fleet vehicles, equipment and or materials beyond what is outlined in condition 3 is prohibited. So that was going over the training vehicles. There's existing fences and proposed fences. What I added in here was just that the existing stockade fence, if it needs to be repaired, it's repaired and maintained in perpetuity. The proposed 6-foot height fence that they have on the plan shall be opaque and maintained in perpetuity. And the rest is really items that we utilize in most of our decisions, like notifying the building commissioner if there's a change in tenant. 10 is regarding the 10 and 11 actually are regarding soil testing. So 10, prior to construction, the applicant shall conduct 1 additional soil test pit in each stormwater infiltration structure to verify soil characteristics and that stuff. And then the other item 2 is prior to backfilling the underground stormwater system, that I would like to inspect the bottom of that pit just to make sure there's no water or anything coming out, which you already did test pits pretty recently, I believe. So, but it's still good to look at it. Occasionally when you're digging up one of those areas, you might come across ledge. So it's good to note these things. There's also some items prior to the start of construction that erosion controls are inspected by myself, and the conservation agent is usually the other one that will come out. Specifying that the limit of the work is the grading and general excavation line, so nothing can go beyond that. Which we'll have a pre-construction meeting to verify those limits. Which actually that's highlighted in 12, but also 15, fencing to be installed to allow a 6-inch gap to allow wildlife. That's standard. 18 was just regarding exterior lighting again, to make sure it's dark sky compliant and no spillover onto adjoining properties. There's no proposed lighting as part of this project, but I'm still putting it in here just in case you want to put lighting in the future, be cognizant of your neighbors. So it's in here. 20 is just a typical, this is something we put in every decision regarding pre-blast surveys. Obviously, this would most likely not require blasting because it's a very limited excavation, but if that were to happen, there is a process for that. The remainder of this is really about long-term O&M, about snow and ice removal, site maintenance, making sure that the stormwater O&M plan is referenced in the decision, which is number 22. 23 is also regarding snow and ice removal and making sure that it's removed from commercial vehicles prior to leaving the site. Phosphorus-based fertilizer shall not be used. 25 is the pre-construction meeting. Goes on and on. The rest is really just, it's our typical items regarding as-built and making sure that, if there's a change in use, you gotta notify the building commissioner. to see if there may be an additional permit that's required. A lot of stuff in here. But that is pretty much how this is the decision that's drafted. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. I can make edits, but I think the big question is, okay, this gets approved, great. What are we looking at for a time frame for when this gets constructed? So, and that's a great question, and it's something that, because a development plan approval, I believe, is good for 2 years, it's not exactly something that can be conditioned in this, but it's something that I think can be relied on internal staff to talk with Jay. We can figure out what the time frame is for construction, but ultimately, the plan is to get a system that is compliant with the stormwater standards, because it's not currently, so. And enforcement is relied upon on the zoning enforcement officer who's here, Tim Icardi, but we will work with Jay to get this moving, and I guess that's what I will add to the conversation. In case you're wondering why there isn't anything saying that this needs to be done at this date, it's not really something that's enforceable on this decision, because it's good for 2 years, so.
Okay.
That's, I think, up to us, town staff, to discuss.
Does the applicant have anything they want to add?
Nothing yet.
Okay. Before we, yeah, I'm gonna change it. I apologize. How quickly do you think you can get this done? We have neighbors here who have been impacted for a while. I understand it's not enforceable, but if we can try to be good neighbors,
Well, not enforceable for the planning board, enforceable from. There are avenues, but we want to let's work together to get this done.
yeah, that's how I would like to see that.
Yeah,
Well, my hopes and dreams were to get it done last year.
Okay,
All right. In reality, I put it aside so we could do this. I'm obtaining financing to get it done.
okay,
That's to be determined. So
Okay.
I don't know if that's gonna be tomorrow or next week or next month.
okay,
All right. At the moment that happens, ready to rock and roll.
okay. I'd like to call on the public before we go to the board. Any questions?
Just how long would this project take once it rock and rolls?
How long do you think this?
You're asking me that?
Yes, because we, yeah.
We don't know.
we don't know why.
We can't answer that question.
That's a big problem.
Well, I don't think that's what they really want to hear.
I've never done this before.
That's the problem, not the work.
I can't lie to you, I've never done it before, so I don't know.
Well, we talking, once you approve financing, how long will it take? A few months?
I'm not kidding, I've never done it before.
I would say you're in the ballpark.
Yeah.
I do work in construction,
Yep,
so you're in the ballpark. It's a few months to get the thing all excavated and rebuilt.
okay. Once you have financing.
Yeah.
I'm more anxious than anybody.
I understand that.
Okay.
Is there a seasonality of the construction too? Is it like
Yeah.
in the winter?
You certainly don't want to work with this frost in the ground, that affects everything.
Yeah.
So want to be, a drier season, so not tracking mud either,
Yep,
so we gotta look at all those things too.
so ideally you would like to, and I've used the word ideally. If financing was to fall into place, you'd like to maybe start by May or June in the dry season.
That's pretty reasonable, I think. if
And
more
be
financial-
done by the frost?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's the best answer we can give you right now, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, is it going to be a licensed, experienced excavation company doing all this work? Or
That
is
will
he-
be discussed, I think, at the pre-construction meeting or,
Yeah, because they're Yeah, there would be some type of,
So.
all right, Tim's got
Yeah, to
this.
answer your question, so, an excavator is licensed by hydraulic license. That's the extent of their licensing and insurance. So he could provide a plan and put it out to bid, but that contractor would need a hydraulic license, and liability insurance.
And it's gonna be. I know like when I've done like septic system in my own yard. The steps they dig so far, it's gotta
Yeah,
be
they need-
inspected.
So,
All the way through.
the engineer does inspections, progress inspections to verify that, the correct depth.
No
and-
corners are cut.
He has to do as-built as well, so there are inspections required for it, yes.
And also, Mike, we're conditioning too that there is town oversight as well when the excavations occur to make sure that, sometimes, especially with those underground systems, you might dig out where you didn't do necessarily a test pit, and all of a sudden you're in this ledge outcrop, which is not desirable, which is something that would need to be looked at. So rather than having it get installed, the town doesn't notice the ledge, and the thing fails. That's where it's good to verify these things, so it'll be conditioned to do that. We would be out there when those excavations occur. So,
Any other questions? Yes.
Do you guys have any more? Because I always have the silly, non-important one. You guys go ahead.
Is there an interval when you're gonna be out there doing the inspections? Is it gonna
yes,
be waiting for the engineer to call and say, come on out and look at this, or is it gonna be an interval that you put on the board?
no, so what'll happen is we'll have the pre-construction meeting when that happens. At that point, what usually happens, rather than getting the engineer involved, because, Bill, you're gonna have oversight, but you're not gonna be there every day.
Right, we're as-built essentially.
It's
yeah.
usually a line of contact with the excavator, whoever the GC is, because they're there every day. And to tell them, you need to let us know when you're excavating, because if you don't get the inspection,
Right.
we've had issues where they might go for the as-built to get it checked off, and we've had issues where they've had to, redig stuff just so we can verify information, so it won't, it's one of those things that it's up to the excavator or GC to let us know and make them aware at the beginning that, listen, if you don't do this, this could be a significant issue for you because you're not gonna get your approvals and, yeah, so just to get a little bit of a belt and suspenders approach.
Perfect.
Any other questions?
And
Yes.
no questions are silly.
So I've heard about other construction, and I'm not trying to relate projects, but for instance, the big water basin at the middle school, and I've heard things that maybe didn't go 100% perfect with that. So is there anything in all of your terms, conditions that states if this work gets done and either doesn't correct the problem for this, the neighborhood that's more urgent this side of the street, or B, the water deters because of all of the construction and suddenly hits my end of the street, which is a possibility. Is there anything built in here that says if it doesn't do what it's supposed to do? Again, sorry for the plain language, but is there any language that covers both sides of the street? One, if it doesn't prevent what's going on now, and two, if the water gets diverted and goes a different way and suddenly my street has more issues. So I am gonna ask it that way if I can.
Yeah, I can answer that if that's all right.
Perfect.
So I don't want to go too far off track, but it's funny that you mentioned the basin in front of the middle school, because that failure of that basin occurred because of less than desirable soil conditions that it was built upon and caused silting, and there was some, I don't know if it was DOT, I don't know who it was, but there was some type of issue with making sure that where you were infiltrating the water, it wasn't really the most desirable materials. So with that, when it comes to pretty much any of these stormwater structures, I would say 99% of the time, the failure comes from the construction of these things. which is why the conditions about the soil testing and verifying to make sure that prior to it being fully constructed, myself and the engineer actually get a look at it to say, okay, this is being built in compliance. Now, you bring up an excellent point about, what if this thing fails? For example, if there's a berm that holds the water, if that fails, there's a long-term operation and maintenance plan that basically documents everything that needs to be done to keep this thing functioning. And there have been cases where these basins have failed. Once again, 99% of the time it's because it's not constructed properly, and there may not have been the best oversight on these things during construction. And yes, the town does have the right to start enforcing and saying, you gotta fix this. The other issue too, or not the issue, but the other item is, in order to do these designs in Massachusetts, you're required to have a Massachusetts registered professional engineer stamp them. And that requirement is helpful because in Massachusetts, most PEs, as you call them, they're gonna want to make sure that they're designed correctly because now their credentials are put at risk if, all of a sudden there's issues and they're not pinpointing why and fixing them. So to answer your question, there are quite a few safeguards, both in the decision, our regulations and state regulations as well, to make sure that this is done properly. But the key is to make sure that it's constructed correctly, which is why a few of those conditions were put in this decision to get us involved on the forefront.
So if there
That was
is,
a long answer.
that's okay, so if there is a problem where it doesn't get fixed, does that mean there would be another year of these meetings, or we call a department, or I guess I'm just wondering what?
No, so the good thing is with this, one of the issues with the stormwater situation here is that there really was no plan to fix to get this in compliance. Fortunately, we have a plan that hopefully tonight is getting approved to get in compliance. We have a baseline here. So if there were something that would fail, not saying that it shouldn't, this has been designed properly, but if it were, we would at least be able to pinpoint exactly where the issue is, look at the plan, and no, it wouldn't require a year of this forum. It would be myself, him discussing with the engineer, what went wrong, fix it. And a lot of times it has to do with if it was built properly, it might have to do with scouring where like inlet pipes are coming into the basin and there's no like riprap or something that was installed. That's an easy fix to fix, but that's already been required on these plans and will be looked at, especially during the as-built phase. So no, it would be,
Okay.
there is a much more proactive approach to fixing this now that there's a plan, so.
Okay, I just wanted it brought up in case there's something that doesn't go right, although we're all hoping that it will.
Yeah, these are not silly questions, they're very good questions.
So I didn't understand also the resolution. I saw you did put the comment about the unregistered vehicles. I heard we don't want more. I don't know if I heard a resolution on, you went out there, you saw the unregistered vehicles. So are you saying because of the zoning and the work that they're now approved to be unregistered? I guess I didn't know how that was getting resolved.
No, so this decision is not allowing or approving any of that. What I specifically stated in the decision was what's currently there, because one of the questions that most of the neighbor, like yourself, has had is, it seems like, there's a lot of vehicles there one day, all of a sudden there's none, and there's a lot. And what I wanted to solidify in this decision is basically, what is the common business practice right now? And also to compare that to what is allowed. So, for example, yes, I highlighted the unregistered vehicles for the Cranes 101 business. Now, if all of a sudden there's 10 unregistered vehicles that are on site, which sounds like that may have happened in the past, potentially, it might still be now. if there's a complaint, if somebody calls, or if we go out there and notice that there's something, we at least have this as a guideline saying, whoa, hold on a minute, you can't tell me that there's 10 vehicles that you're using for training, there are 6, and what's going on here? Also, with the repair business, there's no, we're not giving any relief or anything in this approval. All I'm stating is that in the B1 district, you're allowed to have one heavy commercial vehicle, which is what would most likely apply to your repairs, because that's anything over 14,000 gross vehicle weight, and it's or 3 light commercial vehicles, right, Tim? Not and, it's or. So that's where we're kind of putting the approach of, if we get a call and there's 20-something vehicles back there, there's been a little bit of a go-around of, well, there's training vehicles, there's things associated with the repair. It's in everyone's best interest, including the applicant, the town, the neighbors, to get a little bit more of a defined limit on these vehicles that are in here, and to understand exactly what has been, I don't want to even say approved in the past, because it's related to the Dover Amendment, which is a whole other situation with the educational side, but I know this is getting kind of confusing.
No, it's
Am I explaining this okay?
You are, you're doing a great
I
job.
guess-
Yeah, no.
You saw 6, you identified 6, but we all know they're unregistered. If I had 6 unregistered vehicles on my street and someone, I'm still a little lost on are they allowed to have 6 because you're saying 6 is okay? Or because it's written
Yeah,
See where I'm going with this?
no, absolutely, and I'm defining in here that, yes, so for the business, in the business district, Jay has this Cranes 101 educational business, which there's been, I think there was pending court case about this, if I'm not mistaken, where it was it? No, it never went to court, I don't know what
It
it
was the
was.
amount of uses on the lot, I think.
It was the amount of
I
uses.
think so.
I don't, this predates me quite significantly, but there's some history with your site, Jay.
You
don't
want to hear it.
No, I don't, but with that, Jay has mentioned that he uses 6 vehicles for training, which is a protected use under that Dover Amendment. I am defining 6 vehicles, so yes, 6 vehicles for training purposes is in the decision. So, because that accommodates his protected use per the Dover Amendment. With the other vehicles, because other vehicles, whether they're registered or unregistered, doesn't apply to this, in this case, you know, if you decide that you want to do more stuff, I'm here to get a relief, but it'll be another public hearing and everybody can voice their concerns. Does that answer your question a little bit?
I guess it does.
Okay.
Does that make you all feel comfortable though, is that number feels like an arbitrary, I'm just wondering.
Well, it's not arbitrary. It's.
No, the point is to not make it arbitrary, put it at 6. because
We've
that's-
locked it in.
Yeah, so that's the point of it, so. Cause I do understand that, you know, a lot of this hearing that's been going on for a while has been, what exactly is going on with the vehicles? And there hasn't really been a definitive answer, and that's why I'm just trying to make a definitive answer here. That way in the future,
Everyone is comfortable, and I wanted some clarity, because I still saw unregistered, and I just wanted to understand what was allowed, but are you all,
sure.
that sounds reasonable?
Right.
Okay.
How many's out there now?
Any other questions?
I have one more quick question.
Absolutely.
I noticed throughout the back there that there is a utility body that is laying off to the side, and there's a bucket, one of the ones that you climb in and you go up on the lifts, which is what he does. Just my concern about it turning into a scrap heap down there.
That's fair, and we did state in here that, you know, there's no outdoor storage for bulk materials or, you know, utility bodies. I mean, if you need to move it out there temporarily for the day, fine, but you know, we want to keep everything neat and tidy back there, so that's covered in the decision.
Did you find out, Tim, what the containers were holding, the barrels? There's nothing
I think the Board of Health, so where are the barrels located?
Those green, they look like big,
Like drums?
yes,
Or-
the drums. I'm wondering, I just, again, confirming that nothing is liquid or flammable or,
Well, so anything that's flammable or oil or anything has to be permitted. If it's over 50 gallons, I think it has to be permitted through the fire department, but maybe Jay could answer that question.
I'm not entirely sure. There is no drums outside. We do have drums inside. We have hydraulic oil and motor oil.
So
there's big white barrels in your green containers, the green storage containers near the back of the parking lot behind.
Oh, I'd have to go look myself. I don't know what to do. I mean,
So you're aware.
unless
of
they're empty.
Yeah, you're aware of the conditions that no outside storage. So you would
Yeah.
probably have to do some house cleaning, you know, per this decision.
It may well be. Yeah, I mean, we keep all of our product in the shop.
Yeah, we've heard there could be some storage outside. So that's something we'll look into.
Again, it's not so much the it's what's in it and is it liquid and if it's a barrel.
Depending what's in it, it has to go to the fire department. You'll need safety data sheets, et cetera, et cetera. Any other questions? Tim, do you have anything you want to add, sir?
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I mean, the unregistered vehicles that's exactly what was described. You know, nobody in town is allowed to store more than one passenger vehicle unregistered if they don't have a license. And that's a used car license, whether a class 1 or class 2, and he does not possess that. So, you know, if you see cars showing up there and there's no license plate on it, by all means, just call down here.
Turn it over to the board. Lynn?
I have no questions.
I just have a quick question. Looking at C3, any additional unregistered vehicles associated with cranes 101 training courses or the hoisting equipment repair business shall require additional permitting to the applicable approval authority. A few months ago, he appeared in front of the select board, seeking a little bit of a change to his business. How would that come into play if you're looking at that, and is the town in a position to consider that change until this project is completed?
I would say no, I would do the opposite. So for this, like you mentioned, if there's additional vehicles that are needed for whatever that license is, I think it's for a new vehicle, correct? So with that, I specifically didn't want to condition it in here because we don't have any definitive business operations that we can go off of. It's separate. So to answer your question, the way that this is kind of factored in is that I wouldn't want the select board to issue a license and then all of a sudden this decision is kind of flex where maybe there is a lot of new vehicles that are coming in that are causing hindrances on the neighbors. That's why we have these approval processes in place. So it would require most likely some type of amendment, whether it be major or minor, but we would need more details on exactly what that license would do for the operation and I would recommend conditioning it similar to what I've done here, where, you know, you're capping the amount of vehicles that are going to be on site. But that's down the road for if the select board decides to issue that license, but the main objective here is to get this approved for the stormwater system, so, but really that's kind of between the questions from the neighbors about what exactly is going on back there and what's allowed and the potential for utilizing more vehicles on site where let's get kind of a definitive answer on what exactly is allowed on site now, and then more comes down the road, then come on back. Very wordy tonight, I apologize.
No, not at all.
Verbose. Thank you, Brian.
Okay. I have a couple questions.
Please don't be verbose.
I'll be more efficient. So there's some exigent circumstances, Tim, on the property now where there's the neighbors have reported flooding and the berms and all that stuff. Is there a way for you to remedy that situation in advance of, or to make sure that that's being taken care of in advance of constructing this?
That should be defined by the engineer to, to mitigate any kind of impacts, that are going on now. If it's impacting anybody negatively, the engineer should come up with some remedies for that. But whether it's the stockpile some material on site, whether it's barriers or silt fence or something that would help, or some, hay bales maybe, that should be probably on the plan. I would think. Rob, would you agree to that?
Yeah, your question is more towards timing though, right? Like,
Well, it's so,
if,
yeah, timing. So
Yeah,
they have 2 years to do this. There's flooding now, right? Do you have the tools to do anything to say, hey, you gotta fix that?
That's why we're here right now.
Yes.
He's coming in front of us for this approval, and I get it, it's been going on for quite a while. I don't think it's been any delay on our part, but, he's here because of the issues that are there, so it'd be nice to get some kind of a time frame, nailed down to get this thing moving, in my opinion.
So, but if, let's say this is separate, I noticed from my neighbor's yard, there's this flooding happening. I called you. Do you have any generic ability to do something about that?
No, not really, no. I don't have anything to enforce that. I don't know, Rob, unless you can,
well, I think what you're referring to is if somebody called and there was a drainage issue and there was no solution, because it usually has to be engineered. Obviously it would require permitting. I think we have a plan here that will be in compliance.
Right.
I think what Brian is asking is if, this gets dragged out, we don't see any conclusion here, in the time frame. If there's enforcement that can be taken, which,
so normally, look, if someone is affecting someone else's property negatively, it's a civil issue, okay? On the other hand, we've identified that there's an issue here, and that he's a business, and he has disturbed a certain amount of area, and he's, trying to, fix that. It's already been identified that there's a problem there, so is there, can I fine him? Is that, or can I come up myself with a remedy? Is that what you're asking me?
If there's a remedy.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, really, if someone is draining on my property and it's causing me a problem, I'm gonna send them a letter from my attorney. I don't have a mechanism in the zoning regulation, other than he's coming for a site plan and he's trying to, make more parking or whatever. He should be held to, in my opinion, if it's a problem, a time frame. If it's affecting residents and, they're saying, okay, now I have to take him to court myself. It's kind of not fair when he's creating an issue and he is a business and he wants to create a drainage system. It should be on him, in my opinion. To get it, to correct it in
no,
a timely manner, right?
yeah, I think we're in agreement. I think that
That's what this document hopefully does.
yeah, I think your question is if it's not done in a timely manner, does the town have the legal
Yeah,
authority
so
to move
if it-
things along?
Yeah, so is there an opportunity to, say that hay bales or piling of things will be done within the next 45 days? And then the construction can proceed. Is there an opportunity for that?
So I rely on the conditions of your, of this, approval. So, maybe we could add something into this in the meantime, either hay bales or silt barrier or something should be installed to mitigate any kind of off-site drainage or something to that effect.
Because I would like to find it, to make a determination in the decision that says there is an exigent drainage situation affecting immediately affecting the neighbors. And it's our condition of determination that some immediate action must be taken to remediate. Is there any opportunity for that?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Let me, so. And I don't know, did your long-term O and M plan in the stormwater report include a SWIP?
I believe so.
I think it did too, but what I would recommend doing, so what happens is for construction-related operations, there's something called a stormwater pollution prevention plan, AKA SWIP. That gets approved, which I'm 99% sure was in the,
It's
I
in the
haven't,
package.
yeah, I haven't looked in the stormwater report in a little bit, so, but with that, that's the binding document in per the conditions that states that if you do have issues during construction, stormwater related issues, that's where it needs to be quickly fixed. So in that, there's typically remedies for, number one, the erosion control, but also for making sure that if something is ceasing to be constructed for more than 30 days, it gets loam and seeded, which is actually one of our conditions in here. That sort of stuff. So what I can do is, if you would like, I can include in that the pre-construction meeting, just a requirement that prior to that pre-construction meeting, that the stormwater pollution prevention plan is submitted and reviewed by myself to make sure that we have that in place. I'm 99% sure it is in place, but I can add it just as an extra layer of security.
But that could be 2 years from now, right? The pre-construction meeting could happen 15 months.
We're talking, yeah, this is, I'm answering if something happens during construction. So that's not your
But
question.
I'm saying, like, right now, I think that we've heard sufficient testimony from the neighbors to conclude that there is an exigent runoff situation going on that's affecting them adversely. That there needs to be an immediate resolution, and that I'm hoping that we can find a way to impose within the next 45 days, these certain stopgap things will be constructed. Is there a way to do that?
Can I ask a question
Go ahead.
on that? So currently, or when it rains heavy, who's being affected by it just in the state that it's in? And what's the effect? Drain, offsite water?
Water running across the property.
No, it's
But
flat.
it has to be, the only thing that I'm not satisfied with what's going on here is that we're waiting on financing and we can't give a particular time that this is gonna happen.
Right.
If this happens by the fall, if it's done by the fall, I don't have an issue with it. Leave it alone. I have to reseed the whole lawn anyway. I don't have an issue with it. If it's not gonna happen
Right.
for 2 years, then we have an issue with it.
You know, you know. all comes
There's
down-
nothing, I don't think there's anything they can do temporarily to stop it until the actual construction starts.
Yeah, it needs, the permanent solution is in the document. I understand where you're going, with, Brian, and my understanding was just due to the fact that there's definitely violations of, just the stormwater standards through Mass DEP. I do feel pretty confident that there is ways that, the town can step up. Obviously, I don't want to speak for enforcement here, but, I'll leave it at that. It's a little bit of, let me just put it this way. There's nothing that we can put in the conditions that besides, because this is a 2-year approval. Nothing we can really do about that. That's where it's the town staff needs to shine here.
So when construction begins officially, and say the next day it starts raining, through SWIP, can the town immediately address erosion control?
Yeah, and the erosion control plan is on here, so like they are going to be required to put in erosion controls even prior to construction to make sure, because, you know, it's very common for it to rain during construction. So, and that's where that SWIP comes in if there's a failure with the erosion controls.
Would you agree to construct erosion controls within the next 45 days?
What do you think, Jay?
What's that?
Like silt fence, hay bales, just to control any siltation from running off the property.
So, all right, so we'll put it in as a condition that's agreed upon. We'll note it that the applicant has agreed to do it. So like, be as specific as we need to be in the decision.
Yep, well, let's write it up that the applicant thinks he can do it.
But
I don't wanna make any promises. You guys have already insulted me enough with the "you never keep your promises" thing.
Okay,
sorry, I've been verbose. All right, so you mentioned 6 vehicles. The number 6, but I read 4 and then I see in 3, it says 4 again. How do we get 6?
where was 4? Did I put a placeholder in there? maybe?
No.
So in 2, it says 3 and 1, or 1. And then in 3, it says 4.
In 3, hold on a second. Hold on a second.
In
2, you have one, that's associated with the,
That's the bylaw.
that's the bylaw.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
In 3, it says 4.
I think I had 4 initially and then talked to Jay and he mentioned 6, so
Oh, I see. So the number's been updated?
yes, correct.
Okay.
So that's where I mentioned it, so, my apologies.
All right, so it says there shall be no more than 6 unregistered hoisting vehicles on site anytime. Does that mean he could have 10 other registered hoisting vehicles on there?
No,
So is it
It's
better?
492.
so is
no,
it-
it's down to 1.
I know, yes.
Yeah,
So
so,
is it better to just say no more than 6 hoisting vehicles?
well, it would, the 6 unregistered hoisting vehicles. Because the question was associated with unregistered vehicles on the property. If you want me to put 6, I can do that because it's associated with, the main purpose here is associated uses for the training courses. That's why, because I don't want to get too far into it, but yes, I can remove unregistered and it can just be 6 hoisting vehicles for Cranes 101, the training or education courses. If you want that, that's,
No, I don't want to tinker with it if there's a purpose, but to me, it says, okay, you can have 6 unregistered, but there's nothing about 14 registered. Right?
yeah, okay, no, I hear that. Okay, so just then I can cross that off. That's fine.
Then in the first part of 3, it says the applicant utilizes unregistered hoisting equipment to conduct training. I would suggest adding the applicant purports to utilize unregistered hoisting equipment to conduct training. So I would add purports to and gets rid of the
So 3, the applicant purports to,
utilize, cross out the,
I think we need to hire a paralegal.
hold on a minute. You're killing me.
sorry.
I know.
I don't think we've heard enough or we know enough to know for sure that to make a determination that
Understood, so. Okay, anything else? So do you want, are you recommending for 3, just basically striking unregistered in there for?
I would suggest that for the
Okay.
reason I said, but if it screws up what your intention was, then I'm open to suggestions, just understanding what my concern is,
Okay,
because it's not limiting registered. We're making the distinction.
okay, that's
Does
fair.
unregistered appear, if you take it out there, does it appear somewhere else? Because we had the whole discussion about that at least limits it to some number. So there isn't, like you said, 10 unregistered, but if you take it out there, is there anything saying that that business, then you don't have anything saying this business is allowed unregistered vehicles, so.
Oh, you know, so to that point, because the whole purpose of this was basically to bring up the unregistered hoisting vehicles, because it's been discussed. How about where I say any additional unregistered vehicles associated with Cranes 101 training courses? I can either strike unregistered or put registered and or unregistered and or registered. Is that?
There shall be, so to go back, there shall be no more than 6 registered / unregistered hoisting vehicles on site at any time.
I just was going to say there shall be no more than 6 unregistered hoisting vehicles on site at a time. The next sentence stays the same. It's the other, any additional unregistered and or registered vehicles associated with Cranes 101 training courses or hoisting equipment repair business shall require additional permitting through applicable approval authority. That works?
I think,
I think
Because
it's-
yeah,
so that
any additional,
it
But
talked
not-
about unregistered and, yeah, okay.
So that's where the control is gonna come in.
but it's not additional, it's not a slash.
Nope.
Yeah,
No.
that's not, or it's probably just an or.
Okay.
Then just quickly.
You passed quickly already.
I know, sorry.
It went through for a vote.
Yeah, exactly.
Fueling, paragraph 4, they have to, shall take place on permeable paver working test areas. No fueling and blah, blah, blah. Fueling can occur anywhere else in the lot.
Yeah, because there's no,
All right, so
yeah, because the whole purpose of it is to get it off the permeable pavers, because if there were a spill, then, it goes into a permeable paver and goes into the ground. You put it on pavement, it goes into the catch basin, which has hoods.
Yeah.
To contain it. That's the point here.
all right, and my last and final question is for number 9. Bulk storage of materials is not allowed. You talked about that body of that vehicle. Is that a bulk storage? Because I thought bulk storage was very specific.
No, that doesn't no, it's number 5, outdoor storage of fleet vehicles, equipment and or materials beyond what is outlined in condition number 3 is
So the
prohibited.
part of a car is covered, you think?
Yeah, that's outdoor storage of materials.
Okay,
So,
fair enough. With that, I yield the floor.
We need to take a vote on that.
no,
Bill?
please go easy.
So, let's. I don't know if I'm looking at an old copy of this,
I
but
think
so
you might
we're
be.
keeping so number 2. All right, the 3 light commercial vehicles that stays in. Number 2 or 1 heavy commercial vehicle stays in. And then when you get to number 3. It's, how many hoisting?
It's,
Right, so now that's going to 6 instead of 4.
correct.
So now they can have 6 plus 3?
It would be, no, it would be 6 plus 1,
Large,
Four.
large,
one large
One large.
vehicle for the,
Which already may be there.
which,
yeah,
okay.
and.
All right, so-
And registered. Yes,
One okay,
yeah, okay,
so. The hoisting vehicles. Cranes come in lots of sizes. Is there a concern on larger and larger and larger size cranes?
I mean, it's associated with the limits of his site for his training, so I don't really have an answer for that. Mind you, the main purpose of this is for the stormwater, and I just tried.
Yeah,
get
no, I
a
like
little-
what you did.
Oh,
I like
thanks,
what you
Bill.
did. But Is there a?
I appear to have opened up Pandora's box here, but that's okay.
It's fine.
Talk to the how about the applicant? Is there you currently have a size truck or hoist now?
I have a 23-ton crane.
23 ton.
And I've got a 9-ton crane as well.
9 and 23. Is that your intention to keep those sizes?
Yes.
For the long term?
Well, we don't have a whole lot of room. We can't go much bigger. We occasionally, a customer will bring down a crane to test on.
So the 23 is pretty much the max and the 9 is more of a
Well,
standard.
that's ours. Occasionally, a customer will bring their own crane
Okay.
because we do federal licensing there.
Is it 23 is less than 23 and less, or does it go bigger than?
Oh, no, sometimes they go bigger, right? In size, in footprint, they're not a great deal larger than just their capacity. But we don't want to have anything extraordinarily large in there because it damages our own yard. So we try to keep it limited to our own cranes.
Yeah.
Like I say, we do cave to our customers occasionally and they'll bring their own cranes.
Okay. I'm trying not to limit what you're doing, but kind of put a
We
A
do our own
square around
limitations,
it.
believe me. So if somebody wants to come in with a 120-ton crane, we'll ask them not to do it.
because it doesn't fit in your.
It's right, it's gonna be hard to turn around down there.
What's
and
the max that you think your lot could
I
handle?
think the biggest we've seen down there is 50 tons.
And you think that's pretty much the max you think that could handle in your lot?
It's as much as we want, yeah.
I have zero knowledge of cranes. I am not I
Okay,
don't have the education to start conditioning limits on cranes, because I have no idea what that means, so I would just err on the side of caution.
What kind of limit?
But it also,
The site does limit itself, so.
yes, as does the zoning.
Well, yes, but
maybe a question for Tim. Is there a
Are you talking about a registered vehicle? that
A
would just come
registered,
For a
unregistered?
couple days or something
I'm
like
ta-
that? Or
I'm talking going big.
you're talking about something that,
Yeah, do you have the ability
limited to
to-
what he's gonna store there? For size.
For something we have now,
Yeah.
and my concern is going big 10 years from now. And going triple the sizes on everything. Is there a way, how would that?
But
play
we
itself out?
have a way.
You do?
We have a way.
Okay,
Our courses, when we do licensing,
yeah,
are delineated by the size of the crane. So our crane has 92 feet of stick. If somebody comes in with a 120-ton crane, they're gonna have 241 feet of stick. That means that the course is gonna be larger than our yard, so we can't do it. So we're limited in that way.
okay. I remember what you just said.
stop looking at me, please.
I don't have the expertise in cranes either. We're looking to try to,
It is that. simple.
working with you.
It is that simple.
It is that simple.
It's only so far across the yard.
Right.
All right, I think we'll move on. That's what I got.
Okay. Steven?
You're welcome. No questions.
I could hug you
Sure.
right now.
I will try to be quick.
Wait till the camera goes off.
This has been a long process. And this is the beginning of getting to the end where we want to be. This doesn't solve everything, but it's a starting point. You've heard from the neighbors. You've heard from the board. You've heard from other departments. I asked you specifically, how quickly after getting financing could this be done? In the minutes, it will indicate that you reflected that you'd like to have it beginning once financing happens in dry months and lasts no longer than 4 or 5 months. Is that reasonable for these neighbors to expect?
Engineering, it seems reasonable to me.
I'm not a contractor.
Okay? Because, you know, it would be nice if this could be finished October, November. I know we said November earlier, but I put a caveat in there by the first 3, so these people aren't impacted.
Yeah, you want vegetation growing before it freezes.
Correct. And that can be done with hydro seeding or whatever you choose to do. So that's the only question I have.
Or statement.
Correct, thank you. Rob, I think technically I need a motion to close the public hearing.
Correct.
So
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion on the floor that has been seconded. Any discussion on closing the public hearing? I will call for the vote.
Nick, I.
Brian, I.
Bill, on.
Phillips.
And my understanding is this predates my, coming on the board.
Correct.
So I think
You can make seconds on during the process,
but
but you cannot vote. Thank you for pointing that out. So that motion passes unanimously.
So,
We need to make a decision on the, decision.
yeah, and
There are
it,
pending couple of changes.
yeah, so I mean, I have everything listed that needs to get revised, so I would just, if everybody's comfortable, just recommend to approve the development plan approval and stormwater management permit as amended.
Do I have a second?
Second, Nick.
Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote.
Nick, I.
Brian, I.
Bill, on.
Phillips.
That decision passes unanimously.
Good.
I, the neighbors, and I know we're closed, but I think you've heard at least some eyes on this. I want to thank you for your input. I want to thank the applicant and his engineer for cooperating with all of us. David, thank you for your input this evening.
Good night.
thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you, guys.
Best of
Thank you
luck.
all.
Take it easy. We'll be in touch, I'm sure.
Thank you all. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Well, the next on the agenda is continued public hearing for, LMP Scenic Road on Maple Street.
Correct. So LMP, just, I'm gonna share my screen again. So we discussed at the last meeting, there were some items that we needed some clarification on between the applicant's council and our town council. That has been addressed. It was really just figuring out about the noise ordinances and such, but with that, I believe we felt comfortable with drafting a decision to get this underway. I know one item to note with this project is that, so there was a development plan approval that was approved. This is kind of the last step of the permitting process for the applicant to actually build the stormwater improvements and really all the aesthetic items on Maple Street, really to get them in compliance. So, it'll be nice to check this one off the list, I think, tonight, if the board decides to vote in favor of issuing this decision, but I did draft a decision. It's pretty straightforward. Because it is the scenic road permit, and essentially what I tried to do was just outline exactly what they're proposing associated with the scenic road permit, which is just to essentially allow the construction of the stone retaining wall with a timber sound wall attached. And then there's a removal of a few trees and then installation of trees for mitigation for those. And on here, the items here, like number 3, actually stating that there's one tree within a certain diameter that needs to be removed. And with that, there's no existing stone walls on the site that are gonna be destroyed and need to be mitigated, so that's number 3. For the actual decision itself. For the decision itself. Once again, approval is limited to the improvements as noted on the approved plans. We always condition that any future removal of trees or stone walls within the public right of way, will need to be reviewed by the town planner. I did pull in as well, number 3, that's regarding the chain link access gate, that it needs to be opaque in order to screen views from the Maple Street right of way. You're welcome, Brian.
Thank you.
You're welcome. If you need it to be more verbose, I can add whatever you recommend.
I appreciate your willingness to do that.
No problem.
To be verbose, that's good.
Yes. And then number 4 is getting into the actual specifics of what's proposed and on the plans to make sure that it's actually drawn out as far as complying with our regulations for the scenic road permit. So 4A is the landscaping, which is per the approved landscape plan, which is listed in our documents. There's also the retaining wall with timber sound barrier as B. And C is regarding the, hold on a second. What is this? Oh, so B is regarding the location of the retaining wall and sound barrier, which is on the landscape plan. C documents the, or refers to the detail that's part of our plan. So just to really spell it out, there is one item that was added in here from the applicant. They wanted to add just that. So at the end of this, they put, except that the total height of the retaining wall and timber sound wall shall be reduced as may be required to construct said wall without requiring a variance. That was regarding to the height requirement for fences. The one thing that I will note is that sound walls and fences have been handled differently. So if you recall, for a few of our warehouse projects, there's like 10-foot high sound walls. Those didn't require any height variances for that because it's not a fence and the actual purpose of it is to mitigate the sound. So it's looked at differently. We wouldn't want to require a variance for that because the whole purpose of the height is to mitigate the noise. So Attorney Crowe added that. I don't know if it's necessarily required, but I'm totally comfortable with including it in there. If it makes them feel a little bit more comfortable, I get it. So that's fine. 5 is just about the limit of work. And then also 6 is just making sure that the decision is recorded. So very straightforward. That's the decision. So
Well, we have no one here from the applicant's side to bring it up, so we'll start with questions. I'm gonna start with. Right.
So I only have 27 questions.
They're all.
yeah, so it's just a C.
You're already generating some buzz for the 27 questions.
So with regard to that 4C that you talked about just a second ago, shall be, the timber sound wall shall be reduced as may be required to construct said wall without requiring a variance. The only people that are gonna say, hey, you need a variance is you and Tim, right?
Correct,
So that won't happen.
correct.
Then can we say, if we have to keep that line, which I don't feel is necessary, then adding something that says, but shall be no shorter than some amount, like this gives them a latitude to say, man, you know what, 4 feet.
Yeah, and I think if I recall, for fences, if you go above 6 feet, that's what requires the variance. Cause remember we were talking about it for, I forget what project we were, it was just recently,
Yeah,
we
it was in the
were talking about the
zoning
8
board. Yeah.
That's right, zoning board, we're talking about the 8-foot height, and that would require a variance if somebody wanted to do that, so maybe put, and and shall be,
But in no circumstance shall it be less than 6 feet. Something to that effect. But you'll make the determination, right?
exactly.
They won't construct the 6-foot one and say, oh,
Yeah, wrong color or something like that.
yeah, like we've had before.
No, correct. The high, in this case with the sound wall, the higher the better, and, it actually, I mean, you saw the detail, it's a pretty good looking sound wall, because it has the retaining wall along the bottom, the stone one, and then it's all timber on the top, so it's not like that, the vinyl, solid core, so it'll look better, it'll definitely look a lot better than it is now, that's for sure, especially with the new landscaping.
Yeah.
So.
And then just the last thing to take you up on your offer to change 3. And to live up to a stereotype that I've created, I guess. So this gate, can we require that it's closed when they're not after business hours?
Oh, yeah, I think that's for security purposes.
Yeah, I don't think they actually even have a gate now. But I would imagine if they're putting a gate in, they want it to be closed anyway, so it's not controversial, but that it'll only be open during business hours.
That's fair. So I can put shall be closed outside business hours, or I can put shall be open only during. What would you
So
prefer?
it's whether you're a half full or half empty kind of guy.
I'm gonna say closed during or outside business hours.
Okay.
I'm gonna come back to that in a second.
Oh, no.
Yeah, do you need to add unless in case of emergency?
I mean, emergency situations are emergency situations, so,
Hopefully there's a lockbox with a lock it down.
yeah.
Good decision.
Yeah, they'll be required to have a Knox box and stuff through the fire chief.
So I'll yield the floor.
Oh, we have too much fun.
Yeah, I'm speechless.
I have nothing now.
I'm good.
You're good? Okay.
I just have one simple question.
I'm listening.
What about hours of operation? We're not defining.
The hours of operation would not be part of the scenic road permit.
Okay,
So, and I would be very, very cautious about conditioning anything with hours of operation because part of the reason why this went to court and a lot of conditions were struck was because they were associated specifically with what Superior Court considered an existing non-conforming use.
Yeah.
So that's a good question. I would not include it in this.
that's fine.
So,
My last question, they came in for a subdevelopment plan that was approved, is that correct?
a subdivision,
Yes. What did they first come in for?
I think
Did they apply?
that was way before my
It
time.
was a development plan review, right?
It was,
Yes.
the development plan approval,
Yes.
correct, and that was for the construction of, it was actually, so the development plan approval was extremely similar to what we just dealt with 57 Mendon Street.
Mm-hmm.
They were not in compliance with their stormwater management system, which was, I believe it was spearheaded as far as enforcement with the Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
Came in front of the planning board, they did get a development plan approval, but there were conditions kind of similar to 57 Mendon Street, except the planning board was trying to condition more on the pre-existing use than what the courts thought was in our authority, I guess.
Right.
So, and that's where, you gotta be careful with like applications where, the specifics for development plan approval, pre-existing non-conforming use, this sort of thing. So yes, the development plan approval was related to the stormwater system. And then we're required for the applicant to file a scenic road permit because it's on a scenic road.
How does this decision impact?
It doesn't, so. One of the, if you recall, when this hearing first occurred, I actually wanted to bring in items from the development plan approval because there were items that were specific to this, for example, the sound barrier
Mhm.
wall details. Initially, the discussion was to potentially take whatever the sound study was from the development plan approval and include it in this. But that's where our town council and their council were discussing the validity of that.
Okay.
And, but ultimately, it doesn't affect the development plan approval, and the items in the development plan approval that directly relate to the landscaping and sound barrier wall that affect this have been pulled into this application.
Okay,
That makes sense.
my last question.
You yield the floor?
I don't have to yield.
He doesn't
You
yield
just,
the floor.
you just took it. By osmosis, I yielded it to you.
Thank you.
Oh, do I technically have to close the public hearing?
Yep, I would close the public hearing.
Okay.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second. Bill.
Motion on the floor to close the public hearing? Any discussion? Call for the vote?
Nick, I.
Brian,
Bill, aye?
Bill.
Final decision, making a motion to, as amended.
Oh, yeah, move to approve the decision as amended.
Do I have a second?
Bill second.
Motion on the floor has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Call for the vote.
Nick, I.
Brian, I.
Bill, aye?
Bill.
That motion passes unanimously. Rob, can you bring us up to speed on a Honey Village bond reduction?
Yeah, so this should have been in your packets, but so as you are probably aware, Harmony's been moving along quite well. They're in the final phases of this. With that, I'll share my screen again. I created a plan just to show you what has been constructed and reviewed by the DPW. So essentially. All right, so highlighted in yellow on this plan, this is my little hand sketch. That is the roadway that is to final course. It's built. It's been inspected and reviewed by the DPW. Phase 1 and 2 of the projects, which is shown in this blue outline, that we have a bond in place for that for $707,000. Phase 3A, which is the smaller section in red, there's a bond in place for $212,308. This outline in black is phase 3B, which a surety bond is in place for $691,070. They're requesting a reduction, which they have every right to do based on DPW's review, and they feel very comfortable with how this has been constructed. What will eventually have to happen is that they're gonna have to as-built this and go into the roadway approval process, which is completely different. But with that, our surety bond reduction policy in town is you can do a maximum reduction down to 20% of the original bond, where that 20% will be held in place for, I believe it's 2 years, in case any type of issues come up in the next 2 years of, being constructed. Because you never know, there might be a pothole or something, but that bond is in place so the town can fix any issues. But that being said, I don't know if anybody's driven through here. It's in very good shape, and the DPW also agreed that the bond reduction is fine. So they recommend, and I recommend, reducing the phase 1 and 2 bond to the maximum 20%. Phase 3B, you'll notice that part of it has not been constructed. I recommend not touching phase 3B, where we leave that alone until the rest of this road A is constructed and reviewed by the DPW. So with that, I would recommend. That's still sharing. Oh, okay, sorry. With that, I would recommend that there is a motion to reduce the phase 1 and 2 bond for Harmony from $707,000 to $141,400, and phase 3A a proposed reduction of $212,308 to $42,461. There's also a lot of surety in place for the remaining road network, which, we have all the certificates for that. So
one motion, not two, correct?
one motion is fine.
Okay,
So, have a discussion after?
certainly. No, we need a second.
Second, but
Right now, we have discussion.
there was a sidewalk issue,
Yep, cross street.
cross
Yep.
street, is that part of phase 3? or
Yeah,
how is
so,
that
so
playing into this?
that's a good question. So Cross Street sidewalk, there was also surety in place. There is a bond specific to Cross Street.
Okay.
We are, as I've alluded to in previous hearings, that there's issues with constructing the sidewalk because it would require substantial takings and it would be an issue for a lot of neighbors because of grading concerns, as well as there's like one house that I forget what corner it's on, but it would basically obliterate their entire screening on the street. Big problem. Harmony has indeed come up with a solution to basically do other improvements that are in my opinion, are needed on Cross Street in lieu of the sidewalks that are at the same cost. I have been working with them. We're really at the 1 yard line internally to make sure that we're okay with it. And I wanted to make sure that we're okay with it before it comes to you guys, because it is going to require an amendment, because it's an amendment to a decision. It's specifically stated the sidewalks are part of it, but
There's a separate bonding for that,
correct,
completely covered.
Correct.
Costs, whatever the new plan is, old plan. covered.
correct. There is surety in place for that. So I know it was a little bit before my time, but we have surety for that. So that will be in front of you folks soon.
Do residents get notified when they come back for?
So what will happen is we'll have, under general business, it will come up, and then it will be up to the board to determine if it's a major or minor amendment. If it's decided that it's a major amendment, then it becomes a public hearing, people get notified. If it's a minor amendment, then it would stay, I think it would be administrative essentially with the planning board, but I think once that's in front of you guys, you'll be able to make that determination, and I'll have recommendations as well. But so it could require notifications.
Please, if I can, one more, there was a geotech involved with the detention basin, that all went in first, right? There hasn't been any issues with that, right?
No, actually, so it's funny you mentioned that. As part of this ending closeout situation, Tim and I were going through the decision, and there's a specific condition related to geotechnical reports for the basins, and specifically, if I recall correctly, there is a clay core on one of the berms. I think that's what you're referring to,
Yeah,
which
sure.
clay core is very common with these basins, but it is good to get a geotech there to bore it and make sure that it was correctly installed. And I do have the reports to base, I forget which condition it is, but it does meet the criteria of that condition. So to answer your question, yes, the geotech has been involved.
And is there enough bonding to cover if there was an issue somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, because so there's a lot of bonding for the roadway remaining still.
Which is
And-
sidewalk, so that's
Yeah,
separate.
that's the sidewalk separate, but
Okay.
the roadway bonding would include the drainage system as well, because that's part of the roadway network.
Yep.
So, yes, and that's also another reason why we only go down to 20%. We hold on for 2 years to make sure that if there is some issue with the basin, that we can
It's
address
functioning
it.
well though, because I know that was us.
That'll be 2
It
years
is.
upon final completion.
Okay,
Yeah, yep, and that's all part of the roadway
okay.
acceptance situation. too.
Thank you for all the explanation.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I'm very verbose tonight.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Call for the vote.
Nick, I.
Right, I.
Go aye.
Go ahead.
The motion passes unanimously. Accessory dwelling unit.
All right, so I'm gonna try to get through these quickly. I know it's getting late. But there's 2 zoning bylaw situations that I would hope that this planning board will recommend essentially and sponsor. So let me go with the floodplain one because that one is very much more straightforward.
Okay,
So in Bellingham, we have, it's section or article 16, I think. Yeah, 16, section 240-110, like 113. We have it's a special flood hazard area that we have, and that's associated with the FEMA floodplain zone A and AE. Essentially, what's happening is the FEMA maps get updated every so often. Ours, I think, date back to 2012, so they've been updated and additionally, there's some more requirements that the state, well, actually FEMA is requiring in our regs. And we have to update these regulations to meet those, otherwise we may lose our flood insurance, which is not good. So, and in Massachusetts, the FEMA floodplain administrator is DCR, so before I get into this, DCR has reviewed all these and they're okay with everything that's been proposed, but on the screen, this is our current special flood hazard area, which basically it's very, very simple. It's basically just stating the special flood hazard area. These numbers where my cursor is, these are all of the panel numbers that are dating back to 2012. See July 17th, 2012. Those have all been updated. There's also development regulations in here, and these are all from the federal regs from FEMA, just stating that it's kind of technical, but you know, if you have like a zone A, which means it doesn't have an elevation associated with it, there's requirements to get the best practice to get an elevation. You're not allowed to encroach or fill in these areas without mitigation. Subdivisions within a FEMA floodplain have special requirements. And then these are the coordinators for the floodplain itself. The DCR, as I mentioned, is the state coordinator. The program specialist is FEMA. So this has changed. I'll show you the edits. Hopefully you all had a chance to read them. I'll be very quick.
So the maps are being updated or have been updated?
They are being updated. They are updated. They will be enacted July 8th of this year. So we have to update these regulations before these become enacted, essentially. So
Is the GIS maps reflecting these locations that are called out?
on our GIS online,
Yeah.
I don't believe they've been updated yet, because what'll happen is when these get updated on July 8th, I believe that's when the information will be available to update those. So, and that's something that we're gonna have to work with our GIS guy, that's David Hayner in the DPW.
So we don't know if the footprint of the, flood areas have increased or decreased or.
Yeah, I don't think they've increased much, because what happens is these get updated based on something called a LOMA. It's called a letter of map amendment, and that's basically when a development comes in, they do a study and they might contest whether a floodplain is further back from their property, or it might increase based on different projects too. Usually like a federal or state project, that's when you see a letter of map amendment where you see the floodplain coming further into a property. We don't have a lot of LOMAs since 2012. So. Yeah, so, but I'm sure there are areas where it's changed a little bit, so, then that'll be included in the updated mapping, but. Basically, just so you're aware of these edits, the purpose, this section has been added because this is specific to the regulations. They're very straightforward. It's basically just making sure that we're reducing damage to the public. There have been a whole lot of definitions added. We didn't have any, but these are straight from the FEMA regs. So development, floodway, functional dependent use, highest adjacent grade, historic structures, all this stuff is straight from the FEMA regulations that we need to add. Start of construction, permanent construction, structure, all these things. The new thing too, we need to have a designation of a community floodplain administrator. In this case, it's Tim. He is the community floodplain administrator. It is not me. The district establishment, this hasn't changed, except these are all the new FEMA flood panels. And if you notice, the report date is July 8th, 2025 for all of those. So that's when they're enacted. The development regulations, there is a lot added here. So this is more language if a FEMA floodplain elevation is not if it's absent, so there's specific ways to get that information, and that's really through your floodplain administrator. There is more information regarding the designation of these areas. I did add specifically, let me just see here. Where is it? In the section 240-115. So we're required to we require a permit for proposed developments in the special flood hazard area. Most of the time, these permits are already kind of taken care of with a bigger plan, like a development plan approval or a special permit. But if for some reason this did not require one of those, there's another permit that's required, and I just outlined. This is not from the FEMA floodplain regulations. This is me just being nitpicky and trying to also help him out a little bit with if somebody requests a permit, that you're going to be required to submit a development plan, which is number one, stamped by a licensed surveyor or a PE. You know, you can't just have a hand sketch. Existing and proposed contours in no greater than 2-foot intervals. Showing the base flood elevation or approximate location of the zone A if there's no elevation. Existing and proposed site features. And the biggest thing is number 5, proposed fill volumes and compensatory flood storage volumes labeled in stage storage increments at a maximum of 1-foot intervals. I am not going to go over that unless you really want me to. And this other section all these other sections are straight from the new regulations. Just submitting new technical data, variances, disclaimer of liability, all these items, straight from the FEMA floodplain regulations that we have to adopt. That was a lot. As I mentioned, it's very technical, but this has been reviewed by Eric Carlson with DCR as our contact for DCR. He has reviewed these, has given me the okay to send this to town meeting. Since it is technically a zoning bylaw change, I would ask that the planning board sponsor this and that you recommend this to the select board for inclusion to the spring 2025 warrant.
They're no big deal. Page 3.
Excuse me. No big deal. Okay, go ahead.
Second paragraph,
Is this a minor or a major?
very minor. Second paragraph, page 3,
Alan,
Alan, should be
Yep.
fine.
that's fair. I'll accept that.
All right, fine. And then, if you go to page 4, bottom of page 4. And so where it says Massachusetts Department of Conservation, Federal Emergency, is that like the NFIP state coordinator who is the Massachusetts Department of Conservation?
Correct. So if you look at the old regulations, it was still Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation, but they had a specific address. For whatever reason, I don't know why, but they wanted the address removed. And I assume it's because people are now working remote, so they might have different field offices because it's all through the state and federal. I don't know, but
Okay.
either way, they wanted to keep it generic. But yes,
The state coordinator is the Massachusetts Department of Conservation.
correct. And I know it's kind of weird the way it's written, but that is how they showed it on the model bylaws. So,
What do I know?
yeah, I'm not allowed to put equal signs on these documents because you said that they're
They're not legal.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, well, I yield the floor.
This guy.
I think the floor was yielded to you.
I have nothing to add.
I've been dealing with flood coverage for 50 years and really, I'm fine.
Okay. I will tell you about stage storage volumes at a later date. We'll add that to the Rawls rate toolbox. All right. So, all right, so appreciate it, gentlemen. And I know I'm kind of under a strict deadline with getting these on the warrant. So I would request that the planning board, that you folks make a motion to recommend this article be included in the 2025 spring town warrant. Or recommend to the select board that this be included in the 2025 spring town warrant.
So
Do I have a second?
Second.
So motion on the floor, any discussion? I have one question. Do we send it to them and then they send it back to us?
Yeah, so we will have a public hearing on this.
Okay,
The good news is, because this is not a zone change associated with a specific lot, it will be a lot simpler. I mean, people have, it'll be
50-50 vote.
it'll be a legal ad that is posted. And I think the towns get certified notifications, like abutting towns, but like there's no specific people that are gonna be notified, which is helpful in these cases because when you're rezoning a specific area, everybody around it has to be notified and it just becomes, difficult because then we run into issues of making sure that we have enough space in the room. So anyway, and I don't think that this will be overly contested. I hope not. Knock on wood.
all for the vote.
Nick, I.
Brian, I.
Bill,
Go ahead.
Steve, I.
that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you all.
The accessory dwelling units.
All right, this one's a little bit less straightforward. So this is actually drafted or recommended to the planning board by the zoning bylaw review committee, which there's a few members here. With this accessory dwelling unit, what's happening is the state is essentially, they passed legislation to allow accessory dwelling units by right. And the only form of permitting we have in this town for accessory dwelling units is the family apartments, which that is it requires a special permit through the ZBA. And it's also pretty straightforward. I'm gonna pull these up again too. And essentially, it requires owner occupancy of a principal dwelling. So if you have a house, the owner of the house has to live in it. If you want a family apartment, and then you have to have a family member in that family apartment to live in the family apartment, and you need a special permit to do that through the ZBA. The state has basically said all accessory dwelling units are allowed in single-family residential zones. The issue is that the regulations that have been drafted by the state, they're draft, and they are working on revising these. The other complicated situation is that this was enacted by the Attorney General starting February 2nd of this year. So we don't have draft language to really base our bylaw off of. And it's already been enacted. Great. So we did have draft language to work off of, and this has been there's been a lot of interesting conversation from the bylaw review committee on what exactly this means and putting some belt and suspenders approach to the regulations. Now, by law, we are only allowed to mandate or regulate these accessory dwelling units to the same capacity as a single family dwelling, which we do not require development plan approvals or special permits for single family dwellings. So, you can't require that for these accessory dwelling units. So it leaves a lot of issues were noted because the last thing I think anybody wants is just a kind of free-for-all of just allowing a separate structure on your property. And just to explain, there are some requirements for the accessory dwelling units. It's not necessarily a free-for-all, but I'll go over just a couple requirements to get everybody up to speed. You're allowed to go up to half of the gross floor area of the principal dwelling or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller. So 900 square feet is the maximum floor area you can have for one of these accessory dwelling units, which all of this is defined in these new regulations. So I should add to the proposed language will replace the section of our bylaws associated with family apartments because family apartments are no longer applicable per the new regulations. So it's all defined in here. Short-term rentals would not be allowed in the accessory dwelling units. For the development requirements, we specified that only one protected use ADU is allowed by right per lot in the residential, suburban, or agricultural zoning districts, because those are our single-family zoning districts. It cannot consist of temporary structures, mainly trailers. Has to be, a habitable dwelling. It must meet the setback and building height requirements for what is called other uses set forth in our intensity of use regulations. That is the same regulations we put forth on a single family dwelling. So therefore, we have every right to require this per the draft language that the Attorney General has issued. The Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities has issued. We've also put in here that prior to construction that they need to acquire Board of Health approval because they may be required to they'll need to have some type of sewage disposal system, whether it be an on-site septic or connect to sewer, but that's handled through the Board of Health, so they need that approval. We're allowed to mandate one off-street parking space per ADU. As I mentioned, short-term rentals are not allowed. Business uses are not allowed in the ADUs. ADU is not permitted. Oh, so for 8, an ADU is not permitted in areas of common ownership such as, but not limited to condominiums, townhouses, or multifamily dwellings. The whole purpose of this is, we said an ADU is allowed in one is allowed per lot. Condominiums, townhouses, and multifamily dwellings are usually on one multiple dwellings, and we don't want, if there's 30 townhouses on a lot, we don't want 30 ADUs because it's one lot. There's also a requirement to have the addresses clearly marked and adequately illuminated, and that no lighting shall spill over to, how did I write this? Would cause harm to the good and welfare of the general public or cause detriment to an abutting property.
Very verbose.
Thank you, sir.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Just, don't be verbose.
Yes, I will be quick.
Yeah, no worries, Steve, go ahead.
So is this limited to attached, or can this be a separate dwelling apart from the original?
It can be either or, so it could be a separate dwelling, it could be a modification to an existing dwelling, whether it's an addition or like, let's say you have an unfinished basement. If it meets the criteria of either half the gross floor area or 900 square feet, whatever is smaller, you're allowed to do it.
And then my other question is that, like, for example, when I built my house, the plans were approved with a septic, 4 bedrooms. So if adding onto that house or building something separate, there is no, and you required more septic.
Yep.
Then if you don't have it, you don't build it, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So, and it's a great point because through the Board of Health process with Title V, it's based on bedroom counts.
Yeah.
And if you, for example, have a 1-bedroom ADU and you're not renovating your house to remove a bedroom, now you need an additional 110 gallons per day. Unless you do a separate system for the ADU itself, in which you need 220 gallons per day. But that's all through the Board of Health, which will be required, and there's also setback requirements to septic systems, so like you can't have a structure, I think, within 20 feet of the leach field. So that'll all be, these regulations cannot bypass Title V or Wetlands Protection Act, so.
Good question.
Yeah, and just to add one more thing, that for number 10, an ADU shall provide adequate access for emergency response as deemed adequate by the Bellingham public safety officials and be in compliance with all applicable state and local fire codes. That's an important one, and I will note that I'll stop here with going through because that's the regulations as drafted. As I mentioned, the state has not issued their final regulations yet. We are expecting to see that sometime in May. What we recommend doing, and this is what other towns are doing, is to get ahead of this, to get some regulations in their zoning bylaws. They recommend going, or a lot of towns are going into their Springtown meetings with these zoning articles. Hopefully they get approved by the Attorney General. They may not, but we're taking a pass at it. And once those new regulations come out, that's when we will go again in the fall town meeting to update these again to get in full compliance. There's a couple items on here that the bylaw review committee noted that, so 10 is really the big one about the public safety officials needing adequate access. That the Attorney General might look at that and say, can you actually mandate that for a single family house, which technically you can, because if you do an A&R, you need required access to it. So, will the Attorney General have issues with some of these? They very well may. But I think it's important that with these ADUs, I know there's a lot of people in town that are concerned about them because, anyone having the right to just put basically a tiny house in their backyard, it can be a little concerning, especially with parking requirements and stuff. It was important to add some type of public safety aspect into this. And if the Attorney General says no, it's the Attorney General saying no, it's not the town saying no to adding this in our regulations. So with that is the ADU regulations. This is another one that I would hope that the planning board would sponsor and do the exact same thing to recommend this language to the select board to include on the 2025 spring town meeting warrant.
So I have one question. Can you have a ADU unit inside a business?
No, so the principal dwelling unit would have to be a residential
Okay.
dwelling unit. Good question.
But there is you can add an ADU to a single family home in a like it's non-conforming, like in the business zone.
If it's a pre-existing non-conforming
Okay.
principle, correct, yes, so.
Good work on the committee, by the way. So your motion is to,
What Rob said.
okay. Not to be verbose. I'm done using
Thank
that.
you.
Do I have a second? Any discussion?
The only thing I would add is that there's effectively no such thing as a single family home anymore in Massachusetts.
Okay,
Every single family home can have now, if they're can fit it in somehow, an ADU.
okay. It's good to know. Call for the vote.
Nick, I.
Brian, I.
Bill, aye.
Well,
Steve,
That motion passes unanimously.
Right,
Do we all have a chance to look at the minutes?
Yeah, there was a couple of things, yeah. Of course,
oh,
I start with Brian first.
yeah, start with Brian, Brian goes first, he'll get mine anyway.
So. The only change I have is like page 4.
I don't, hold on.
You look good?
I think I have it here, I got it. All right, I got it.
There, second sentence, under continuation of public hearing, LNP. Recurring,
What does that mean?
the public recurring. That just says, should say hearing. Second sentence, under that heading.
Oh, interesting,
I didn't know what that was.
the car, huh?
I yield the floor.
What was yours?
All right, so page 2. One of them, Mr. Devine, is. I think my discussion was all about Lake and Prospect. And somehow or other changed 1, 2, 3, 4 sentences down, or 4 lines down, to Cross Street and Lake. I think it was all Lake and Prospect.
This is for this one,
Yeah,
okay, so.
unless it was somebody else was talking about that intersection. I don't think it was me.
Then I'll just strike that one sentence. Mr. Devine also raised concerns about the corner of Cross Street and Lake Street. Because it already said that you asked about the intersection of Lake and Prospect in the first sentence.
Okay.
You want, okay. Yeah, okay.
Well, yeah, as long as we leave the next sentence that says that. Highly recommended the rounding of the corners.
Yep.
And so that would stay in.
Yep, it would, it's just Mr. Devine also
Yeah,
raised
that's-
concerns about the corner of Cross
That's
Street.
what I had.
Okay. Excellent.
Anything else?
Move to approve the minutes as amended.
I have a second.
Second, Steve.
Any discussion? Call for the vote.
I will abstain.
Okay. Fair enough.
You weren't there?
Brian, I.
Bill, aye.
Bill,
Steve, I-
Anything else?
I haven't, I don't think there's any more agenda items.
Okay.
I have a Mylar that needs to be signed and that's it.
I'd like to turn over.
So,
Brian.
thank you, Bill. I have some good news and bad news. Governor Healy has had nominated me to be a judge in the probate and family court. And as of yesterday afternoon, the governor's council's confirmed her nomination, so I'm going to be a judge in the probate and family court. My swearing in is
Congrats, Brian.
thank you.
Congrats.
So I'm going to be sworn in on March 26th. The bad news is that the rules require that if you're going to be a judge, you can't hold elected for nominated government positions such as the planning board, such as the zoning board. So I have to tender my resignation effective March 26th when I get sworn in.
Just so happens to
Meetings
be,
will be much.
just so happens to be the day before the next planning board meeting. Yeah.
I've never had a meeting in the auditorium.
You
It's
should
like,
join us as.
Well, now you could
as
attend as a resident.
You can residents, you could be.
You can speak at one of the mics.
no, thank-
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you. It's, the planning board does important work. All boards do important work. You're volunteering your time, it comes in lieu of spending time with your family and professional obligations. And there's not a lot of thanks for it. Sometimes you take on a lot of stress. You become targets on Facebook, and it's tough, hard work, and thank you for doing that. And it's been my honor to work with you and to everyone else that has sit in these seats along with me.
I just want to take a minute to thank you from the moment I got on the board. You made my transition easy. I consider you a friend. You'll be greatly missed. Again, I don't know how Governor Healy knew about the 26th, but it was an interesting time. But you'll be missed. And heartfelt congratulations.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Been a pleasure working with you, Brian.
Thank you for lying. Well,
Thank you for all the learning that you taught me, because, I mean, when I came on, I didn't have the background, and I got a lot of my background from you and the other members that were here, so thank you.
Oh, come on, he's not that helpful.
no, I'm not.
No.
I don't think I should thank you for cornering me that day in the library and recruiting me. I don't know, maybe, what is it, 10 years ago now?
Was it 10 years? No.
Maybe not 10, but
I
8,
hope not.
Oh,
pre-COVID.
yeah, with Jim.
I can thank you.
Yeah, Liz is, she's carrying on with the planning board and the zoning board and all the bylaw review committee.
Anyone else?
I think you're an awesome example of what it means to be a member of a community, all that you do for the boards in town, and then giving back, with some professional knowledge. It's, the senior center, when you're volunteering, I think it's an awesome example of how to be a member of a community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it hasn't been a long time with me, but clearly you know your stuff and you've added a lot to the board and to the community, so. I've always agreed with things, prior to me coming on the board, but I certainly respect your knowledge and what you've done, so.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
I just want to change my comments. I know I'm thanking you on behalf of this board, but the town's losing a valuable person
Thank you.
on future boards. And I know I can't say anything in the town's behalf, but it's your game, and I think the town will miss you.
Thank you.
So for the last time,
Well, you move to adjourn.
yes,
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
any discussion?
Nick, I.
Brian,
Go on,
Bill, I.
Steve,
the last time.
Good night, Bellingham.